This week on Gravel, we all are making our pitches for our sponsors that we want to come and give us money. Muck you! D&G Sports, Jerry, we're going to miss you. You're one of a kind. And we hear a story from Andrew about the time he went to Kodiak Island and was the only one that came home without crabs. It's on Gravel.
Well, hello there, Gravel Nation. These are your Graveliers coming at you. This is Andrew McKean. I'm talking to you from sunny, lovely, and flood-receding Glasgow, Montana. Daniel, where are you?
I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska, America. Dog with kennel cough, sun shining, turkeys gobbling. Ready to podcast.
You know, they make shots for kennel cough.
I know. She got it anyways. She had the shot.
They also make shots for turkeys, too. You know what I mean?
Oh! Like 410 wear legal.
Like heavyweight TSS by Federal Premium Ammunition. Every shot truly counts. That would be
the third leg of our stool. Bronson, what's going on in your world?
Guys, I got to tell you, boy, that sounded like the most Minnesotan guys ever. I am looking out my window from Studio 1A, which is in the top level of my house in my study, and I'm looking out, and I've got two Drake wood ducks, which are at most 15 yards away from me, out in the oak grove right outside my window, and they're walking around trying to figure out if they can find some acorns. I am so ecstatically happy about these ducks walking around my yard that my wife thinks I'm kind of nuts, because I'm constantly interrupting conversations to look out the window to see what the ducks are doing. But it's that time of year where the migration is coming through, and we've got these birds that are looking for places to build their nests. And so my son and I this week put out a wood duck box, and we cut a hole in it, and I stuck my AquaView underwater camera in it. And so the camera itself is embedded inside what looks like a little sunfish. So I've got this sunfish body sticking out of the top of the wood duck box. I don't know if that's going to discourage the wood ducks from coming in or not, but it looks down and into the box. And if it gets occupied, I will be able to hit a button in the most voyeur possible way and watch, the duck sit on her eggs and hatch them. So I'm hoping that this works out. If it doesn't, you'll never hear about it again because I'll be embarrassed. But if it works out, I'm going to be bragging about it for the next year.
You know what's going to happen, Bronson? An osprey is going to come and get that sunfish.
Then you're going to have some real video worth watching.
It may happen. I got a ton of wildlife around this week. We've got the turkey. So all the snow melted all at one time. So we've got brown grass again. But I had a group of turkeys come through, and the tom was strutting, and the jakes were acting like punks, like jakes do, and the hens didn't want to have anything to do with them. And I had my son get out his box call and hit a few notes on it, and he got the tom to gobble, and it was pretty exciting for all of us. So hopefully we'll be able to do a little better job later here in a few weeks when the season opens and get him his first bird.
So does your wife make fun of you for your love of birds? Because mine incessantly, like at dinner parties and at just awkward times, she just teases me relentlessly about how much I'm a bird dork. Is that just something I got to live with?
Well, no, because my wife always, when she introduces me as a biologist, and she gives everyone else that knowing look like, he's not all there. So she had low expectations to start with. And no, she doesn't make fun of my bird obsession, except for when we're trying to have a very important financial discussion in the household. And, instead of me yelling squirrel and running to the window, I yelled wood duck and run to the window. So, but she seems to tolerate it. She truly must love me, because I do completely interrupt important family-related stuff on a regular basis at this time of year. So. But that's why we wanted to move here. So, mission accomplished.
It is interesting seasonality, though. I mean, at least here in our world, the spring just arrived last week. The meadowlarks came back. The rooster pheasants are all starting to show off. They're lording it up on fence posts and cut banks and being highly visible in their little breeding demonstrations. And yeah, a week ago none of that was happening, and now it's everywhere. I'm pretty happy myself.
I do have a question for you guys. So I have a pair of hooded mergansers that have showed up on my pond too, and they nest in tree cavities too, so they might occupy the wood duck box. Is it wrong that I'm kind of rooting against the mergansers? I mean, is it speciesist of me?
I wouldn't look at it that way. I think you're a landlord, and you can, despite what the Supreme Court says, I think you can probably have some sort of racial configuration of your neighborhood if that's what you want to do.
So you're telling me that it's discriminating between a hoodie and a woody is okay?
I'm not saying it's okay, but I think you're going to do it, and you should find the light at the end of your tunnel, your moral tunnel.
Well, what would they say about that in the Magna Carta? That's really the big question that Dave Wilms and the guys from Your Mountain podcast would be asking. What did they say in Magna Carta? I don't know. I think they were silent on the issue of hooded mergansers.
Some questions just don't have answers.
Which would make the best quill pin?
Ooh.
Probably the merganser.
I don't know. That's a little fishy.
Imagine the merganser's dismay when they find out after the ice thaws that there's no fish in your pond.
Yeah.
No room at the end.
So for my parents that are probably listening to this podcast, when I say merganser, I can translate that to merganser so that they know what bird I'm talking about. So...
Well, we're in the first week of April. April Fool's. My mom's birthday has just passed. I think I sent you guys at least one of the many April Fool's jokes, pranks, and nonsense that I was privy to. But that was that Vortex video where the rifle scope is actually the personal assistant and keeps on recommending shooting-related activities for the family. I thought that was pretty funny.
That was hilarious. Kudos to the boys at Vortex, or the guys and gals at Vortex that put that video together. That was you nailed it on so many fronts.
Nailed it so much that the guys in my office came in excited about it because they were totally convinced it was a thing.
Let's do when I first opened it up.
Well, it started out like it was a thing. That was the cool thing, that it started out, a scope that talks and does some bore sighting. I thought, that's an innovation, and I was with them. But when it turned into a crazy Alexa, except like a Second Amendment Foundation Alexa.
2A
Alexa. Oh, Alexa with 2 A's at the beginning. Patent pending.
I think we need to put that clip on our Facebook page. We'll have a link.
We probably should. Now, Remind me, is Vortex, were they the same ones that put together the bullet cam video from a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Yep. So now, the only thing I got against the boys at Vortex is they keep working with the wrong ammo company on those videos. But that bullet camera video that came out a couple years ago, there were a ton of people that thought that was real. Because I would get questions about, is Federal coming out with a bullet cam, to match that? Totally honestly thinking that it was true, that it wasn't fake. And I had to break it to a number of people that was a April Fool's video, and that, and these were things that were happening in August, not anywhere near April. So people had believed it and thought it was really a thing.
Well, the guys in my office are engineers, and so they had it figured out how it could be real. So it wouldn't surprise me if somebody built one, a scope that can bore sight itself and then optimize itself. It's a pretty cool idea. Just a couple of motors, I'm told, just got to be able to turn it up and down and left and right, and you're good.
Well, I'm in the process of collecting submissions for the Outdoor Life Optics test right now, and it is amazing to see just leaps of technology. That's like a merganser, a merganser. Now we've got holographic or virtual reticles, and I think that's going to be increasingly a thing where you can toggle between all kinds of reticle choices, and it's not that hard to move the reticle then virtually to match, your load. So I don't think we are that far away from that.
I agree. On the topic of good quality jokes, Bronson, how many stir sticks have you found in the last few days?
I sent you a couple pictures, didn't I? I went to pull out my dry erase marker to write a note up on my board. I was shifting a state from one column to another because we got them to change their regulations for TSS shot. And so I was up there and I went and grabbed the marker and pulled it out, and there's a stir stick in it. So I had not found a stir stick in a while, so I had to take a picture and send it to you and say, "Yep, you're still doing it." So
the gift that keeps on giving. I do recommend for our listener, as you're contemplating the pranks you're going to play around the office, longitudinally subtle pranks like hiding 1,000 stir sticks in somebody's office it's a good play because it just keeps giving, and it pisses them off at a monthly or weekly iteration, which will only serve to increase the venom with which they come back at you, I'm sure. Is that true, Bronson?
It is. In fact, one of our listeners, JJ Reich, is collecting venom for me that he's bringing back. I think you guys saw the video. He killed a black widow spider in turkey camp, and so I texted him and told him, save the black widow for me because I'm going to find a use for that with Dinger. So he
save the neck for me, Clark.
Though I would worry a little bit that the next time he puts a little bitters in your rye, it may not be bitters. Might have some sort of psycho effect.
That fits the theory of disproportional response. You guys know that theory? If you want something to stop happening, you just completely and disproportionately respond to an affront. I think that fits that theory, don't you? Like, Dinger hid popsicle sticks in my office. I'm going to kill him.
Yeah, it burns down your house.
Yeah. Okay. I get the message, Bronson. No more popsicle sticks.
Well, I'll make sure your family's not in the house. I mean, I'm not that vindictive.
Yeah. Well, what are we going to talk about, gentlemen?
Well, you wrote a neat piece the other day for Powder Hook that I'd love to talk about here on the podcast. You mentioned that one of the guys that helped run your local outdoor shop had passed, and you wrote kind of a homage to the local retailer and to the local expert that we all used to find in the bait shop or in the archery shop or the gun shop. Talk about that for a little bit, would you? About kind of where you see retail and what role our listener might play in that and how they could be thinking about it.
Yeah, this is in true on gravel thematics. Glasgow. Oh, by the way, I have now received 2 glass cows.
Oh, nice.
And I've done a horrible job of recognizing that. So I do need to get a little visual and post it on our Facebook page. But near as I can tell, I mentioned this previously that Glasgow has been designated the loneliest town in America, the farthest distance from an urban center. When you kind of pare that back though a little bit, I think we're the town that's farthest from a Walmart. The nearest 2 Walmarts, there's one in Havre, Montana, 165 miles to the west, and there's one in Williston, North Dakota, 155 miles to the east. So those are the closest big box stores. We do have a Shopco, used to be called Pomida, that is now going out of business. So that's a long way, longitudinally long way of saying that we kind of have the best of the old times, where we've got one of the best sporting goods stores I've ever experienced here in Glasgow. It's called D&G Sports. And the guy I was writing about is named Jerry Ketchum. And Jerry died about a month and a half ago now. Curmudgeonly, sharp eye, opinionated, very knowledgeable, not very much patience for posers or people who come into a sporting goods store and try to act like they know more than he does. But he was also kind to kids and ladies. He knew everything that was for sale there and how to use it, and was a really good friend of mine. So I wrote a little, as you've said, homage or kind of just a eulogy to not only Jerry and what he brought, kind of his crusty way from behind the counter, but he's an archetype, and so is that store. Kind of the last of the independent sporting goods stores, and the people who work at them and populate them, I think, is also an archetype that we were losing. So Jerry was, not a high schooler or a, working part time as a break from college. He had worked there for I think 27 or 30 years. Vast institutional knowledge, not only of the product line, but also places to go in my county and animals to hunt. And so when you went in there, you weren't just buying a product; you were getting a real education in terms of local insight and local intel. We're missing that, I think, and that was part of why I wanted to talk about Jerry and the local sporting goods store. Is it's kind of old timey now, certainly with big box stores and clerks and retail assistants who might not do it because they love it. They're doing it because it's just a job. And so one is kind of interchangeable with the next one. They're just there to make the sale, not necessarily educate. There's definitely exceptions to that, but I'm already kind of grieving for the future of the local sporting goods store. So anyway, that's what that was all about. And I think as we were talking off camera a little bit, the retail world is changing no matter what sector you're in, but it seems like it's really changing for the hunting and fishing sector and the local sporting goods store and gun counter. What do you guys think? Do you see that too?
Yeah. I kind of probably share the same attitude towards gun shops or sporting goods shops or fly shops or bow shops that you do, that those small independents tend to have better expertise, people that are passionate, connected. It's kind of like how I view government. The more local, the more closer it is to the people, the lower level of government it is, the better service you get, the better they understand you. The issue with a big box, and we sell a lot of products to a lot of big boxes, but I've had the experience where you go into Walmart and you're looking to buy a license, for instance, in a state that you're not from, and you ask the clerk what license you need. You're asking a person who 10 minutes ago was working in automotive, and he is there just because he knows how to punch the buttons on the ELS machine to print out your license. You're asking him for advice on what license you need to buy so that you don't violate state law. You're in trouble. They don't have that level of expertise. Now, if you go into a small retail shop where those guys or gals, but let's face it, hunting and gun stores, it's almost always a guy behind the counter. When you go in there and ask them, hey, I'm going hunting for this, what license do I need? They're usually going to know. That's a level of expertise that comes from being connected to that actual sport. So those small independent dealers, you tend to get that better expertise. And look, there's times when I do know more than what the guy behind the counter about the products he's selling. And sometimes I hear some really bad advice. But by and large, the smaller retailers are places you could go for good advice and good trust. In the changing market, economies of scale and bigger boxes, there's pros and cons there. But I think that that service element and that level of expertise is probably going away to some extent. Now, that being said, I think a lot of newcomers have had really bad experiences going into small shops too. You hear about the stories of going into the gun shop if you're a woman or you're a hipster and you don't look like the guys behind the counter, treating you badly or treating you like you didn't belong there. That's just bad for business. But it's also not very welcoming to help bring new people into the sport. So it cuts both ways. So what do you think, Dinger?
Man, there's a lot to say about this. Obviously, we're in a battle for attention as sellers of anything. We're in a world that demands more and more convenience. Amazon's one-click ordering has probably amounted to 5 packages a week on my front step because my wife just doesn't go to the store like she used to. Something I would impart on our listeners is just kind of a thought for you is thinking about the price of the things that we buy as sportsmen and women. And when I say price, think about price as both the cost and the price, I guess. I think that supporting independence makes a lot of sense. I also think that supporting niche big box makes a lot of sense because of a few things. And I'll use just my last NWTF banquet as an example. But, when you go to the local conservation thing, or you even at the national level, you're participating in conservation events or in hunting related events, the Amazons of the world are not there supporting the thing that you care about. And Amazon is probably by a large order of magnitude, they and Walmart are the largest sporting good retailers in the country. And I would say that probably includes hunting by a wide margin. And yet, when we go to the hunting things we care about and the conservation things we care about, those people aren't there, and those organizations aren't writing the checks. And so, one way to think about millennials are kind of known for supporting causes with their purchases, and one way you can do that in voting with your money is to pick some of the endemic retailers, whether they're big box or local, and put your money with them, spend your money with them, even if it is slightly less convenient or slightly more expensive, because that money in some way is an investment back into this way of life. What do you guys think about that thought process?
Yeah, I agree with that. You're right. When you're at a banquet, the local FFL is usually probably from maybe one of the big box retailers that that's in the hunting world, but probably an independent. They're there. They're the ones that get hit up for donations to banquets, and they live in their communities, and so they're the ones that say yes. That's absolutely true. I have the funny experience that our company, Federal Ammunition, has a program where we offer 4-H shooting sports and Boy Scouts and scholastically target program and high school trap teams. We offer them the ability to buy ammo for their leagues directly from us, and we can offer them a slight discount because we're doing kind of the direct thing. We're cutting out the middleman, but we're really hesitant to offer that program because we don't want to cut out our local dealers, because the local dealers are, first, where we make our bread and butter. But second, we don't want to necessarily disconnect those teams from those local shops. And then you get the situation where we offer the program and we offer a good price, and we're $2 a case cheaper than the local retailer, and then they go into the local retailer and try to convince the retailer to match this price, and that's really unfair to them because that guy's trying to make a living as well. So I run into those situations all the time where people are trying to do the right thing and be good guys, and they're feeling pressures from every direction. They're the ones that are dealing with gun regulations in a lot of these states. They're the front line that has to deal with that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for our conservation community to appreciate the work that they're doing. And remember, you can't buy guns and you can't buy ammo on Amazon. Those are industries that likely are not going to face the same trends that you're going to deal with buying, all your electronic gadgets and Whole Foods and everything else. So protecting our retailers and protecting those people that are in the business is important for the long-term health of our sport, because someone's got to do a background check in order to buy a gun. That's where you go to do it.
Well, I mean, it's hard to disagree with anything that you guys are saying. I think there is another way that I'm seeing. I mentioned earlier that I'm in the process of casting my wide net for optics submissions, and optics are one of those categories of gear that I've said it a number of times. I can't remember if I said it in this context, but optics they frustrate and in a relationship because they all kind of look the same. They're all sort of generic black tubes. Their performance can be kind of mysterious because they don't really reveal their true assets until you use them. But optics there are at least a couple of companies. I'll mention them by name. Maven is one, out of Lander, Wyoming, and Tract Optics out of Pennsylvania is another, that are direct to consumer. So there is no retail availability of those products at all. They come right from basically you order on a website, they come direct to your house. It's hard for me to look into the future and not think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of categories of gear. And in some ways, I'm pretty good friends with both owners of those companies. They have tried to replicate that independent retail establishment sense of customer service and deep knowledge of the product line by interacting via email or other ways with their customers virtually. So it's kind of an interesting way to go about it. They don't have the overhead of a brick and mortar establishment, and they don't have to pay to keep the lights on. So they can offer their gear at a pretty competitive price, but what they lack is the ability to kind of hold it, heft it, evaluate it in person. You're getting all of this through the medium of a computer screen. So there's pros and cons of it, but I just think it's amazing how fast this has happened. With, like I said, with every sector, but it feels like in ours, we put off this inevitability of change for a long time, and now it seems like the pace is
optics
quickened.
are one of those things. Amazon does sell a lot of optics, and you've got websites like Optics Planet that is a site largely dedicated to selling optics. And you're right, there's some pros. There's definitely some pros in reducing, the intermediaries, which every time there's an intermediary step, there's going to be additional cost because people need to keep the lights on and pay employees and all that. That's absolutely true. One of the things that's interesting about the optics world is that the key to selling optics in the retail space is you got to get under glass. So you need to have space in the display case. That's the first step. So then you're in front of the customer. And then the second step is honestly convincing the retail agent behind the counter to push your product, because when you walk up to buy optics, there's not a row of boxes where you're looking at and comparing features and benefits and things. They're all under glass, and you're looking at them. And if you're looking for a scope for your deer rifle or your AR, the advice and the recommendation that the guy behind the counter gives has a huge sway in what you end up buying. And I hope I'm not popping any bubbles, but a big way that companies convince the guy behind the counter to sell their scopes is they've got incentives for them to do it. The more scopes that they sell, the more spiff they get. That's just the way that the optics retail world works. So maybe there's some advantages doing the online world where you're competing on features and benefits and price, and not this convoluted system where the guy on the other side of the counter is getting paid by the companies to try to push the product. Did you know that, Dinger? Did you know that that a lot of times the retailers are getting spiffed?
I did, and actually, a friend of mine owns a company that does that, but for manufacturers, where the manufacturer will actually staff the counter. So taking that concept even a step further to where the person behind the counter doesn't actually work for Cabela's, let's say, they actually work for Bushnell.
Yeah, well, if I'm in the store that day and somebody's asking questions, I'm one of those guys that'll come up and say, "Hey, have you taken a look at the new Nitro from Bushnell?" Look, I'm clearly.
It's hard to imagine you pimping your products, though. Jeez.
No, I always disclose that because I'm a very, very upright and ethical person. But there's a lot of force that in the retail environment that the person behind the counter has. And then you got the big publications that are doing these big optics tests, there's a person that probably knows more about optics than 99% of the world, on this podcast, Mr. Andrew McKean.
Mm-hmm. And I'm spiffless, I want you to know. That's actually one of the very kind of interesting things about this test, and I'd say it really only emerged in the last 5 years, is not only readers and consumers of the content, but also the manufacturers sort of saying, hey, what do I have to do to get a favorable review? And consumers or readers saying, ooh, I wonder if, somebody had their thumb on the scales here. I hate to say this because I think a number of my peers at other media groups are influenced by things like advertising and things that are more, I guess, countable than relationships. But at least for now, until somebody gives me a deal that I certainly can't refuse, it is fully independent, and I'll stand by the integrity of the test.
So, and I can independently confirm that, because I remember a conversation that one of our PR guys had with one of our product managers in the company, and the product manager was lamenting that they hadn't gotten reviewed in the optics test from Outdoor Life. Well, the reason was they hadn't gotten the product there on time. They didn't follow the rules, and the only way you can get a review in the optics test is you need to have your product there on time for it to be independently reviewed. There was no, buying advertising and getting in the gate. And I remember the PR guy saying, look, the rules are the rules. There's nothing more I can do.
So we're talking about brands a lot. And, if we're going to become the Instagram influencers that we all dream of being one day, I think we need to start heading down the path of getting ourselves a sponsor. What do you think, McKean?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm so ready to be influenced. I'm almost thirsty for it.
So how do we go about picking who we want to work with? Or is that not how it works?
Well, that's charming. Kind of old fashioned and kind of quaint, but I think that's the first way we go about it. If it doesn't work, then we just use some sort of, other less charming way. But I think look at what we stand for. I mean, just our name alone. So we could be, maybe we're looking for a gravel company.
Oh,
maybe. I mean, think about that. Like maybe it's like a ready mix.
Yes.
Right. So I mean, maybe that's the way we go. That seems weird though. Or maybe it's on gravel, which I feel like we've created an expectation that it's not just sitting on gravel or maybe sifting gravel through our catcher's mitt in the outfield. We're driving on gravel. So maybe we need to think about an automotive company, a pickup brand.
Well,
I don't think that's wrong.
But we probably couldn't agree. We couldn't agree on the brand, though, could we?
On the count of three, everyone say they're a truck company. 1, 2, 3. Ford.
Chevy.
Toyota. I was on 5, though, so I can't be trusted.
And actually, I only say it because I'm driving a Chevy now, but its days are really severely limited. Hear that, sponsor, potential sponsor? Maybe in the market.
On gravel wrapped blank? Sounds pretty good.
Oh, can you just see that? How about a tailgate insignia, just big on gravel?
That's awesome.
I'd buy that.
Man. He could probably pitch like an on gravel edition to one of the manufacturers, since we'll sell so many.
It's got the brush, hang down brush on the back that keeps the gravel from spitting up and hitting the car behind them. That's
mud flaps.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, here, let me do a fake read. Let me do a fake read for a potential sponsor right now. You guys ready?
Well, this is where you really excel too, by the way.
No, I'm just making it up as I go.
I'm ready.
This week's podcast brought to you by Quikrete, the cement manufacturer. When you need to mix up some concrete and make your front yard so it's not all covered in gravel, you use Quikrete. And you can cover up this on gravel crap, because let's face it, gravel is shoddy and not very well prepared. Whereas a nice, smooth concrete driveway, It's nice to park on. You can play basketball out there. Get rid of gravel. Get on quick.
No. I'm sorry. So you're splitting the difference between the voice of authority and the kindly neighbor.
That's with a stuttering problem.
Okay. Hey, guys.
At least you didn't say guys. Hey, guys, here's the way it's going to be.
Put the right emphasis on the correct syllable.
So I think we should also kind of crowdsource this a little bit. Obviously, if there's a brand that is just champing at the bit to get to be associated with On Gravel, we'd like to hear. We'd also like to hear from our listener if they've got a brand that they think has a affinity for us.
So how do we price this? I feel I have a proposal for you as the director of sales and marketing for On Gravel. Here's my thought. We charge per episode $1 for every listener we have.
Ooh,
that'd
be nice to make $700 an episode.
Maybe it should be a penny for every listener. I don't know. I mean,
that's a good way to start. But all right, you Brooklynites, you Brooktards, I just made that up. That's bound to be an endearing term. Let's hear it. Who should we have as our sponsor? So, in all seriousness, I think Muck Boots should come right along board. I am in Muck Boots more than I'm in any other footwear. We've just dealt with dire flooding. I've lived in Muck Boots. I may have slept in Muck Boots. Now that you are self-professed friend of the sportsman, after you kind of had that dark dance with animal rights, come on back to us. I think we could use you.
Oh, did you ever see that almost social media disaster that Muck Boots had, Dinger?
Yeah, I saw it. I think Andrew actually sent it to me, didn't they? It was something with HSUS, wasn't it?
Yeah, I watched it kind of in real time because I too am a fan of Muck Boots. But they had done a local fundraiser for their local animal shelter in near them, and I guarantee what happened is some intern social media person did a tweet or a Facebook post, I think it was Facebook, and talked about the Humane Society of blankety blank county that they were at, the local animal shelter, but tagged Humane Society of the United States, and then went home for a long weekend. And the entire weekend, the entire agriculture Twitterati and the hunting Twitterati just went nuts like social media does and attacked Muck for that post. And then the following week, they came out and said, whoa, we did not give money to the Humane Society of the United States. We gave it to this other group. But it still, it was out there long enough where people were convinced. I'm sure people were burning their Muck Boots because, that's what America does now. You burn whatever.
So if we're going to take Muck Boots as our goal sponsor, we have to come up with a way of promoting Muck Boots that's exciting and memorable, just like other influencers do on Instagram. And you guys got any thoughts about how we could do that?
April Fool's video?
Well, maybe it's all of the unintended uses of Muck Boots.
Oh.
I've got a Muck boot that it's an old retired one, but I use it to cover up the exhaust stack on my tractor.
Okay.
See, I'm just going to go with straight sexuality here. Like, I think men and women wearing Muck boots as their only requirement for our Instagram purposes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, get mucked or something. Hashtag get mucked. And it's the only requirement for us to share your get mucked post is that you have to have Muck boots on, and the rest is optional.
So to the attorneys,
let me add one more thing.
Wait. Before we do that, we need a disclaimer here. To the attorneys at Muck Boots, you can send your cease and desist to eric@powderhook.com.
Get mucked.
I love that tag, by the way. That's going to go somewhere. I think, though, to just to be a little bit sort of more brand directed, I think the only other requirement, they have to be on gravel.
Yep.
So I'm going to paint a picture for you. You have a dear listener of ours, JJ Wright. He's in his whitey tighties only, with muck boots, standing on a gravel road, smoking a cigarette. That's going viral, right? Like that's what we're looking for.
It is, but JJ is the ammo daddy, so he'll be holding a box of ammo out in front of him, and that'll cover up his private parts.
Oh, I like that. Yep, 410.
Literally going right there. Depends on which way you hold the box.
I was thinking one cartridge.
Perspective. Again, your cease and desist letter to the lawyers at Muck Boots. Eric at powderhook.com.
Attention, get mucked.
Yeah. No, if I were to offer another product, I think Stormy Chromer has got to be one in the mix. One, because my company doesn't compete with them. Because let's face it, I compete with almost everybody else. And then, it's just the greatest headwear ever.
Plus, it'd be relevant in Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, the lumbersexuals and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I do spend 9 months of the year in a Stormy Chromer.
There's an endorsement if I've ever heard one. I honestly didn't know they made Stormy Chromers in children's sizes.
They actually do.
They do.
my son has one, and he's 9. And Andrew, I'm sure, drowns in that. But
I can turn a truck around inside that.
But now it's way too late, and Stormy Chromer is not an advertiser, but they had a huge sale on March 14th. That's Pi Day, the Greek number pi. And I didn't get it, but I figured it out when I went to their website. They offered a 33 point, what is it? Yeah,
31.4, 3.1.
31.4% discount on that day. And the reason is that's how you determine your head size, is you measure the diameter of your head and divide by pi, and that gives you the circumference of your head, and that gives you the diameter, and that's what your hat size is. So when I called you guys and asked you what your hat sizes were, it was relating to that.
Are we getting on gravel chromers?
We're getting chromers, but they're not going to be on gravel because our logo is way too complicated to put on.
I can't wait. I'm gonna dish our logo a little bit. I can't wait until people see our logo a little bigger, because there's a lot of goodness hidden deep in that logo.
We probably need to
when we have our billboards and stuff. Yeah, when we get our billboards, and we're the next Howard Stern show.
Oh yeah, probably in front of every tractor supply company. I'm just gonna keep dropping potential sponsors here.
Mm-hmm. Who makes the liners for the inside of your truck? The floor liners, I feel like that'd be a good one too.
Yeah. Did they have floor liners back when your truck was built?
Oh, that's fun. No, you have to buy them aftermarket. The rubber was a new concept then.
Well,
for our listeners' purposes, I have an old truck and I like it, and I get made fun of a lot for it because it makes noises vehicles aren't supposed to make. But you know what? Still going. 257,000 miles today.
Well, my last pickup, I got 220 out of it, and then I had to let her go.
I've got, it's kind of relegated now to a ranch pickup, but I've got a 1994 Toyota pickup. It was the year before the Tundra, or the Tacoma, I guess. So it's just an undesignated Toyota pickup, but it's got 235,000 in it. But now it's not rolling up the miles like it used to. It mostly just hauls fence posts and chicken wire, but starts more readily than any other vehicle in the collection.
You know what's on the side of every gravel road is fence. Almost every. Is there like a name brand fence company that needs to be our sponsor?
Well, there's Red Barb brand barbed wire.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want barbed wire or do we want electric?
I think we want barbed wire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a classic. Ideally rusty.
Tetanus vector.
It's the name of my band.
Well, coming back to content, I want to let our listener know that if there's some, it's not competing, I would call it a companion podcast opportunity. Just last week, I put the finishing touches on a 6-part podcast with our friend of Powderhook named Dylan Ray. He was a pretty interesting guy. Dinger was telling me about him, and on paper, I was like, I don't know, this guy sounds like maybe he's just too earnest or wants to try too hard. But Dylan Ray is a youth pastor in rural Kansas and had this kind of novel idea to break down into really basics all sorts of different hunting disciplines. So how to shoot a bow, how to shoot a rifle, how to sight in a rifle, and break it down to such elementary levels that anybody who was just flirting with the idea of doing it could listen to these podcasts and get a pretty good idea of how to begin. So he came to me and he said, what if we did something on hunter education? You know, it isn't so gear oriented, but really sort of the idea of it. So we did a 6-part podcast, which there is actually quite a bit that's visual in terms of like parts of a gun, how ammunition works, but also gun safety and gun handling skills. Anyway, check it out. I'm pretty proud of it, and I hope it appeals to people who may have never taken a hunter education course or just want to refresh what they've already learned. But where can they find that, Dinger?
You just go to soundcloud.com/hunting101. The podcast is called Hunting 101. And if you check out Powderhook or any of Powderhook's social media, you'll see it posted there. Bronson, I want to run. Have you seen that, Ryan?
I've seen the post. I haven't watched them yet.
Okay. So we did something a little crazy, potentially. We did something I guess no other hunting company I've noticed has done before, in that with the look of Hunting 101, you know, getting a podcast off the ground in some way feels more legit when you've got a real logo and a real look to it. So we used trendy like colors my wife would decorate her house with, and we used a squirrel as our logo.
What color?
To just try and take. Well, it's a tan squirrel, so you can. It might be half black and half white, so maybe it's a gray squirrel. I don't know, but it's a tan squirrel, and the idea is that, you know, most of the marketing and energy in the outdoor industry goes toward deer hunting or big game or even upland game, but for a lot of people, maybe even I could go so far as to say most, small game is where we started. And so we might be one of the only outdoor brands you see with a small game animal as its mascot. So I guess it's not a mascot when the goal is to shoot it. So maybe it's just a mark.
What do you mean it's not the mascot? The Minnesota Gophers are a mascot, and we shoot the heck out of them. We covered that back in episode number 2.
And the Putnam County Midgets are a mascot. And oh, wait a minute.
By the way, if you're not trapping gophers yet, I mean, this is 2019. Come on.
I haven't seen gophers out yet. So the ground's brown, but it's still cold underground. So I don't know if they've emerged from hibernation here yet.
Will you please take Ford gopher roping this summer?
Of course.
Oh, you guys are going to love it.
So I got mocked and ridiculed because in that episode 2 podcast, I described the way that we hunt gophers in around our farmyard as the closest thing to a Western spot and stock as you're going to find. And all of my friends out west mocked and ridiculed me for comparing shooting gophers at 50 feet with spot stalking mule deer in the Montana breaks. But I stand by it. Screw you guys. It's awesome.
Well, before we get off the Hunting 101 podcast topic, I will just say that most of our listeners are probably fairly avid hunters or just seekers of quality entertainment. And if the entertainment you seek is actually to learn the basics of hunting, that podcast, I think, is going to do a really good job. We've got maybe 30 or so episodes recorded, and we're going to cover lots and lots of ground and explain hunting concepts as if it's the first time our listeners ever heard of it. So thanks, Muckin, for being a huge part of that. I think I'm excited to see where it goes. It's the thing that, if somebody in your life says, I want to learn to hunt, first thing I'd love for you to say is, well, you should get the Powderhook app. And if they're not a get a new app kind of person, send them that podcast, Hunting 101.
I did kind of sniff at it a little bit, the idea of it. I thought, well, some of these concepts are, they're a little lofty. I mean, they're a little bit unreachable, but the more I thought about it, no, they're not. They just have to be introduced and explained in a way that breaks them down into their constituent parts. I mean, everything from what are ethics to how a firing pin activates a primer fired, center fired cartridge. I mean, it's all doable. It was fun to do.
And as much as that sounds like something a new person would listen to, I've listened to a lot of them, and I'm really intrigued because I keep learning things. There's a lot of things that as hunters we think we know, or we know by association, but we don't actually understand. And so I've enjoyed some of the other episodes as well, just because how does a firing pin activate a primer? Well, I think I know, but it's kind of fun to hear the actual evidence of how it works.
Do you guys cover dram equivalents and why shot sizes, the bigger the shot, the smaller the number?
Nope, not yet. Maybe
but
you need to be a guest on there.
Dylan had actually talked about that very thing of basically how to decipher an ammunition box.
Yeah,
I didn't know. I hadn't heard that one. So we're excited about it. Check it out. Hunting 101. Go to soundcloud.com/hunting101 for now.
Okay, it's time to move along in our program here. Dinger, I think you had a dichotomous question of the day, unless you feel like the pickup trichotomous question has sufficed.
I don't. I have a lot of I have a lot of questions. Muckin, are you an Oxford comma?
Funny you mentioned that. I wasn't, but now I am. I've evolved or devolved.
I'm a yes.
I'm a no. I also put 2 spaces after a period.
No, you don't.
I do.
Primitive.
What? Are you using a typewriter to send your emails?
I learned to type on a typewriter, and so I do 2 spaces behind a period. Well,
I think that's just the stutter.
Well, it could be.
It's at least a stammer.
I'm not sensitive about that. I've been working my whole life to overcome it.
On gravel, bring your sensitivity.
If Steve Jobs didn't want us to hit the spacebar twice after a period, why would he make it that's the function on a iPhone to make a period? If you hit the spacebar twice, it makes a period. Boom. Steve Jobs.
No.
Should
we get back to the Oxford comma? Why have you adopted the Oxford comma? It's superfluous.
Nope. So I'm a newspaper man, and I felt like it slowed the cadence of sentences unnecessarily. But the more I thought and then entered the magazine world from the newspaper world, and more frequently I encountered the Oxford comma. And dear listener, you probably are aware of this, but I'll just mention this. It's also known as the serial comma. So it is the comma before the final and in a series, or the failure to put a comma before the and in a series. But that Oxford comma is that conclusive comma. The reason I have evolved to accept it is I feel like it is a necessary point of clarity in sometimes awkward or unclear sequences or series of things. And I'm all about clarity. And so anything that you can do, and I don't want to be willy-nilly about it. Sometimes I'll use it, sometimes I won't. So I thought, well, if I'm serious about clarity and I'm serious about consistency, I need to get on board and just adopt it, and I have.
So the Oxford comma is superfluous, comma, stupid, comma, ridiculous, and unnecessary, period.
Oh, so is ridiculous and unnecessary, is that just a term now? Because it's not divided by anything. It must just
It's
be
just
like a
redundant.
phrase.
That over.
You're ridiculous and unnecessary.
You're superfluous. Sorry, Ford. You're superfluous.
I think you're speaking out of your Oxford colon.
Yeah.
Oh, 2.9. 2.9.
Not bad.
For
I'm
the
going
Oxford.
3.1. But I air higher consistently than the two of you. Do you think is that kind of a reference to my zest for life and my love of laughter, and you guys are curmudgeonly and less excitable? Is that
No,
why
it's
I
your
air
need.
higher?
It's your need to be loved.
Yeah, but
Oh,
you're trying to curry favor with us. You look at us as icons of the industry, and you just are trying to, kiss
yeah,
up to us.
that's a good point. This is a good spot for a new tagline. Go muck yourselves.
Oh,
Okay, I want to hear. It's kind of a conclusive thing because track season is here, and I got to go before very long. I want to hear the best April Fool's prank you have ever executed.
oh man.
That's tough. I'll give you one just from this April Fool's. My kids and I surgically opened an Amazon box. My wife being the Amazon chasseur in our family. Always. My kids actually refer to the UPS truck as the Amazon truck. So the Amazon truck came and dropped off a box, and my kids and I took dirty Kleenexes and trash and opened the box surgically, replaced what was in there, put it back on the step, and they got to stay up late because mom got home late from a meeting and watched their mom open a box of nothing but trash, and very dirty trash at that. And they laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And so that's mine for this time. That can't possibly be the best ever, but it was pretty funny.
I frankly, mine's not very good, but it's the best I got. So, circa 1999, I was working at the state legislature, and my boss had just put in a new pool at his house in the suburbs just the spring before this session, or the fall before this session. And he lived right next to a big wetland. And we made a fake amendment to the environment bill that I was shepherding through the process that would have made a fee of like $10,000 that you would have to pay if you have a swimming pool within X feet of a wetland, and convinced him that that amendment was going to pass and that he needed to do something to stop it. And he went around and was lobbying against that bill on the floor of the Minnesota House. Uh, and it was completely fake. It was fake. It wasn't in the bill. It wasn't anywhere. We had just made him think that it was. So
That's pretty good.
he fired
That
me,
is
and
pretty good.
I had to go get a new job the next week. But
Worth it.
yeah, it was worth it. I don't regret that.
I don't give a muck about that.
Well, mine is actually not an April Fool's joke or prank. The only reason I mention it is in reference to what Dinger's box of Kleenex. And it could have been April, but it just wasn't. So I was on a boat in Kodiak Island with a bunch of other industry people. It was a media hunt, and we were hunting Sitka black-tailed deer and ducks, and we were fishing for halibut, and then we had crab pots out. And the way it kind of worked is we could take home one 50-pound box and these waxed boxes, and you could fill it all the way to 50 pounds. It could be all deer meat, it could be all crabs, it could be. So we decided we were going to just share and share alike. And we would, on the last day, it was a self guided thing. We just kind of had a big meat distribution chain, and we would throw like cuts into each box. So everybody got 2 back straps, everybody got 2 front shoulders, everybody got 3 crabs, except for one box that was going to my friend Doug Genneret's house. And Doug was, I think, helping clean up the boat, and he wasn't really part of the parceling out of the goodies. And so in his box, we put a rock from the beach and a couple old beer bottles and a duck that had been sitting out for 4 or 5 days. It was nothing but trash. And we taped up all the boxes and we flew them all home. And while most of us had Kodiak crab and blacktail backstrap and harlequin ducks, he just had a box full of rubbish.
Jeez.
So the moral of the story is that on the boys' trip to Kodiak Island, Doug Jennerit's the only one who didn't come home with crabs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
3.1.
Not even three.
Well, I'm putting that in the intro, guys, so you better get used to it.
All right. Final word? I know what Digger's going to say.
Muck boots. Ladies, gentlemen of the muck. We stand ready to sell more muck boots to more feet of Brooklynites than you could have possibly I don't know. My pitch fell apart. Anyway, if you would, dear listener, would you share a photo of yourself wearing only muck boots to help with our pitch? Thank you.
Stormy Cromer. Look, you're American made. We're American made. You're from the great cold north. We're from the great cold north. You've got flaps. Everything that we say turns into a big flap. I think it's a match made in heaven. Stormy Cromer. My wife's a Youper.
Is that a selling benefit?
I think that needs to be at the end of every ad. Just like that. My wife's a Youper.
That would be so good.
Ram trucks, you're born to be on gravel. We're born to be on gravel. Let's ride.
Jeez.
Michigan, which is where Detroit is, which is where Dodge is from.
Mm-hmm. And his wife's a Youper.
My wife's a Youper. Not a troll like Dodge, but...
Okay, well, you've done it. You've somehow, some way, some time spent a long while with us. And we appreciate it. Dear listener, we hope to see you right back here next week. Until then, won't you please keep it on gravel.